This training is about OPTIS, but there's so many other things that play into it. When I first started doing the trainings, I said, all I'm doing is telling you what to put, or not what to put, where to put this. If you have this piece of data and we're asking for it, this is where it goes. But as I've done this, I've learned, well, where did you get that piece of data? And there's just so many facets to this. That's also why I have Joni Bramlett, who's the capital program manager, come in and talk, and Sharon Pierenboom, who does the 5311 program, come in. And this time we're actually going to have a couple guests, Francine Peterson and Jenny Erickson. I don't know if any of you have talked to them on the phone, but they'll also be here because they're going to be transitioning into kind of the OPTIS technical assistance, and so they thought they should come and listen and learn. And plus, I'm a little rusty on some of the things they do, like processing payments and doing quarterly report entry and that kind of thing. So they'll be here when I go, oh, I can't remember. They'll be here because they do it every day. So it'll be great. So we do have a lot to cover. The early sections are probably not the thing you're really anxious to get into, which is doing a reimbursement request and that type of thing. One of the reasons I spent a little bit of time at the beginning kind of going over some things that may not interest you is it just gets you used to using the system and working around in it to where it becomes a little more familiar before you start doing the reimbursement requests and the quarterly reports. So I am your point of contact for OPTIS immediately following the training, like if you have questions about the training. But I'm not a program manager. So if you do have program-specific questions, it's best to contact one of your program managers. Or you can always call me, email me, and I'll point you in the right direction. So I'll be doing some talking quite a bit at the beginning and some PowerPoints, and then we'll get more into hands-on work and that type of thing. So you're all sitting at a computer. We're not going to log in right away. Something that has confused people in the past is you're going to have a password to get onto this computer, but then you're also going to have a password to get into OPTIS, and you just need to keep those straight. At one time they were both the same. I can't remember now what I've done, because I think the password to get onto these computers is just password, so that's pretty easy. I just had one guy kept using his OPTIS password to log into here, and he got logged out. Anyway, so just be aware of that. There are actually 3 OPTIS sites. We have our production site where all the live data is. We have a training site, which is what we'll use today. And we also have a test site where when we're testing new things, we can work there. So you'll be using the training site for the next 2 days. And that kind of frees you up to not worry about messing anything up or making a mistake. The training site is copied from production periodically, but it hasn't been copied since, I think, April. So when you first log into training, you may think, I know I've submitted my last 3 quarterly reports and you don't see them. That's because it's old data. It's kind of behind the time. So just keep that in mind when you're in there. The user guide that you have in front of you is yours to keep. So you can write on it, put your name on it, do whatever you need to do. I'm not going to go page by page by page through this. I'll probably refer to it or say that what I'm talking about is on page such and such. I have the agenda here. I usually stick pretty close to this, but like I said, it's kind of flexible. In this front pocket also is a context and quick reference guide. So it has some helpful names and what we do. So I'm the OPTIS trainer. There's an OPTIS administrator who's Ivan. He's the kind of the technical guy who can help you with that. Also, if you forget your password or get locked out or need a new one, you can contact him, either phone or email for any of us. Then I have Robin Bierstrom. She's my supervisor. She's in the system probably more than anybody, so she's also a really good contact if you can't get a hold of one of us and you need to know something. Then I have Francine down here, periodic report and payment coordinator. So she processes payments, and she also takes any periodic or quarterly reports that are sent to us manually, like a hard copy or email to us. She's the one who takes those and then enters that information into OPTIS. So she's real familiar with that. And then Jenny Erickson is also a payment processor, but she manages all the assets in OPTIS. So when you purchase a new vehicle, she's the one who enters that into the system so that there's a record of it. So They're both payment processors, but they have slightly different specialties, and you can contact them. And I have our website on here. There's the 2 web addresses for OPTIS. So the production site we call prod, and the training site is train. And we'll be typing that training one in later on today. It's kind of a long one, so. And then there's some terms and definitions here that you'll learn as we go through here. One of the kind of quirky ones, I'll just point out down here, there's a little open book icon, and there's an X right above it. So there's an X and an open book. The open book, when you're looking at an OPTIS document, means that document has been finalized, published, it's ready to be read, it's a complete document. When I first started using the system, I thought, it's an open book. To me, that doesn't make sense. And then there is an X, which means an incomplete document. Just the way my brain worked, I had the hardest time getting my mind around that, because to me, the open book would be something you're still working on, and X just means, okay, we're done, we're ready to go, but it's just the opposite. So the way I think about it now is X kind of marks the spot where there's more work to be done, and the open book just means it's ready to be read. So anyway, so then you have your binder with tabs. There's a section at the very back, training materials and notes. If you want to take extra notes, you can do that. At the back tab, there's a little cheat sheet, which I used all the time when I first started, to help you know when we say, quarter 3, that's January to the end of March, and that type of thing. So it really, really helps when we go back and forth. You'll notice on here, for state quarters, we have quarters 1 through 8, and that's because that's the way OPTIS deals with quarters. Before we started using OPTIS, we would say fiscal year 12, quarters 1 through 4, and then fiscal year, say 13, quarters 1 through 4. Well, now it's quarters 1 through 8 in the biennium. So that's kind of a change of thinking, but anyway, that's just a reference for you if you need it. I'm going to have lots of handouts. It's up to you where you put them in the binder. If you want to put them in the logical place in the binder, that's fine. If you want to just collect them. I tried to make sure there was holes punched and everything, so you can put them in here if you want to. And then also on this front tab, those are also the URLs that you'll need to know to get into OPTIS. So I don't know if you've heard this. We repeat this all the time, but we say, if you have documents, please submit them all together to public transit, meaning don't email one and mail another one, especially like say you're requesting reimbursement and then you also have some backup documentation that's required, and they come in 2 different formats, and it's very easy for them to get separated, and then either we don't make the payment correctly or we call you unnecessarily and say we don't have what we need, and you say, oh, I nailed that before I sent this one electronically or whatever. So it's really, really helpful to us if, when you're submitting a document to us, that they're submitted together using one format. So we start with a transit agency with an executed grant agreement. You'll be submitting quarterly reports or reimbursement requests. So if you mail or fax them, they go to the mail processor, who is Arla, and then she does her business, stamps them and whatnot, logs them in and gives them to the payment processors, who are Francine and Jenny. If you enter your information yourself electronically into OPTIS, then it just goes right into Francine and Jenny's queue, and they can just go right in, and they check this every morning and see what new reimbursement requests have come in, what new quarterly reports have been submitted. And then if you email them, we ask that you send them to the reporting inbox, and hopefully you all have that. I'm not sure I have that in any of the materials, but talk to me afterwards if you need that. We were getting a lot of things emailed to, say, Jean Palmatier, and then she would maybe forward it or maybe forget to forward it to the person that needed it, and then a payment would get lost. So we're asking that everything go to one centralized place that we can all access, and Francine and Jenny also check that every morning. So if it is a reimbursement request, it would go to the payment processor. Their job is to just make sure your documents are complete, that you have given us everything that we need. If they're not, they may call you and say, hey, you purchased a bus and you need your, whatever it's called, pre-award certification form or whatever, and it's not here, could you please send that to us? So they just do a cursory check to make sure that attachments, even if they're attached electronically in OPTIS, are there. And if they're not, they may call you. So then they begin the payment process, and if its documents are complete, they create the reimbursement or payment request in OPTIS. It's sent electronically to the program manager, who then looks at all the detailed information about it. Is this a legitimate expense that you're requesting, and that type of thing. And if it's fine, if they approve it, then it'll be processed in our financial system, and if not, you may get a call from them. So sometimes it's possible you get a call from both the payment processors and the program managers, just depending on what type of questions. And the reason I'm saying that is it sometimes seems that we don't have, it would be helpful if you had one person that you could go to and ask all the questions. But it just, the way our work works, it doesn't usually work that way. So something I wanted to mention here is that when we approve a payment in OPTIS, we have to go outside of OPTIS and log into Teams, which is ODOT's financial system, and begin that process and process your payment. And then ODOT, it's gone out of our department, and ODOT's financial system will then cut you the check. So there's a delay between when we process it and say everything's fine, and when ODOT says it's fine and it goes out. And there can sometimes be a problem if there's an address wrong or something. So we try to process payments really quickly. In fact, Robin, my supervisor, has told the payment processors they have 2 days from when a payment is in their queue, and assuming everything's there that they need, 2 days to get it into ODOT's financial system. And then it can take 5 to 7 days after that to get paid. So it's possible you could be paid within a week. 2 weeks is probably more the norm, but I'm not sure what all of your experiences have been.
Great, yeah.
Has it been?
Yes.
Good, okay. So anyway, and then if you have questions, it's helpful to know who to talk to. So if you're calling about, you did a reimbursement request and it's been 2 weeks and you haven't seen the check yet, or 3 weeks or whatever, you can call Francine or Jenny and they'll help you. I think I put on here, they split up the workload. So Francine processes payments. Yeah, I did put that on here. For Jean, Matthew Barnes, and Sharon Pirenboom. And Jenny processes them for Allison, Joni Bramlett, and Sharon Coleman. You don't really need to know that, but you can always talk to Francine and Jenny about a payment. And then obviously if you have questions about what we talked about or how to do something in OPTIS after the class, you can talk to me, person C. And then quarterly reporting, like specifics about what you need to report, or policy-related questions, you should talk to the program manager. Anyway, so that was just kind of a graphic. You were saying you're a visual person. I kind of need.
I have a question.
Yes.
This is going to be my first time submitting a quarterly report.
Okay.
So it's best to be consistent and enter. I mean, whichever way we're going to complete a report through OPTIS,
right,
correct?
Right.
So if it's best is to do the entry and send it through that way instead of emailing or faxing.
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
The mailing or emailing is if you're not using OPTIS. Okay. Sometimes there's a reason where, I don't know, somebody was trying to attach a very, very large document to OPTIS as a backup for a payment or something, and there's a limit. There's like 10 megabytes or something that you can attach, and it was bigger than that, and they couldn't seem to divide it into smaller pieces or whatever. So then they emailed it to the reporting inbox. But they'd had a conversation with someone, and I think even in OPTIS, in a comment section in the reimbursement request, they said, backup documents sent separately or something. So it's good to just communicate that way. But for the most part, if you're working in OPTIS, everything will be in OPTIS. So, good question. Any other questions about that? Okay. So this is the objectives of this training. Becoming familiar with OPTIS, just the design of it, the terminology, acronyms, which we'll probably have some of, and the documents that we store in there. And then you'll be able to locate the information you need. So if you want to know about one of your payments or what the balance is on your grant or that kind of thing, you'll be able to just go into OPTIS yourself and find that without having to call us. You'll be able to register new users. So if you hire a new person or whatever, you can do that. Revise agency and user information, so phone numbers, and somebody gets married and their name changes or whatever. You'll be able to view and understand OPTIS assets. Right now you won't enter your own assets. We do that for you, but you can go in and look at your asset register and see what vehicles and eventually equipment and facilities we have in the system for you. You'll be able to enter your periodic or quarterly reports electronically and request reimbursement electronically. So that's our goal for this class.
When do you think that ODOT is going to get the other capital assets on there, not just vehicles but equipment?
Very soon. We have a work order in process with the software developer to help us manage that a little better and allow you to use your own, what do you call it, asset number or whatever, there's a better word for it, but to be able to, because OPTIS assigns a number, but then a lot of agencies want to use their own number that they track the vehicle or the equipment or whatever by. So we're trying to find a way to allow for that. And I think that's the reason we haven't finished with the equipment and facilities getting those in the system. Plus it's very, very time consuming and we're all super busy, but not an excuse. But I would say 6 months. Okay. So just a little bit about change. It's I think most of you are to the point where you're ready for this because a lot of people have been talking about it and we've been using it a long time, and you've probably heard, I don't know if you've heard negative, positive things about OPTIS, but at the beginning the change was very difficult because everybody was so used to doing it one way, and then we're saying here's this electronic way, but we were almost forced to do this because we can't manage things with paper anymore. I mean, it's just not, there's just too much work, not enough people. So, so here's our first acronym, Oregon Public Transit Information Systems, OPTIS. Obviously it's for use by Oregon agencies. It's public in the sense that it's open to everybody, meaning we can look at it, you can look at it. Your agency can't log in and see his agency information, however, because there's passwords and security measures, but it's open in that sense. Transit, obviously specific to transit agencies, it's information, and this is Webster's definition of a system, interdependent elements forming a complex whole. That's OPTIS to a T because there's lots and lots of pieces, but it's the whole picture, and you'll get to see what that is. So the who is external users, which is all of you, and internal users, which is us. And when we log in as an internal user, we see slightly different menu options than you do when you log in. Ivan, who's the OPTIS administrator, when he logs in, he's got 50 things on his navigation menu because there's a lot more that he does in the system. If you are the primary user with the highest set of privileges for your agency, when you log in, you'll see the most options on your navigation menu of any external user. And then you may have other users for your agency that you just want kind of read access, and when they log in, they wouldn't see say the item that says create documents, because you don't want them creating documents, but they'll be able to just view things. So it all depends on how you're set up in the system as to what you see. But it's basically just us and you and us and them. The Y is basically this picture. We just have, this is actually all one agency's files that I pulled, although some of these are closed files, you can see that, but all that information for one agency is stored in OPTIS just at a click of a button. So you could look at a list of every grant agreement that you have, closed or open, and rather than having to go to a file, pull it, open it up, and look at all the payment requests or whatever, you can just go into OPTIS and see it. So it's streamlining things. Our funding levels have, I don't know, somebody said, gone up 500% or something, but our staffing levels have pretty much stayed the same, and there's just too much work. And so, and more mistakes were happening because paper is easy to lose, and it's just the nature of the beast. I worry, kind of old-fashioned, that some of this information that we're trusting OPTIS to store might get lost too, but I'm assured that it's backed up frequently, and it's all safe. So I just have to get over that, according to my son. So So the benefits, this slide was actually from something I did at the OPTIS conference in Seaside, where I was kind of trying to sell the system a year or so ago, but it's really true. OPTIS is direct. I mean, you can just log in and see what you need to see. It's transparent in the fact that you can see what we see. There's nothing hidden at all. It's automated, so with the click of the button, you are doing things that you used to have to do manually. It's very accurate. It won't let you overspend a grant. It won't let you overmatch or enter, say if you're entering mileage on a vehicle, if you enter less mileage than you did last time, it won't let you because it's saying, that's less than what you did before. Obviously centralized and interactive, and the interactive part is really good because you can call with a question and I could say, okay, what's the number of the document you're looking at or whatever, and I can log into OPTIS and we're both looking at the same thing while we're talking. And it just helps the technical assistance a lot. So the where is anywhere you have internet access, whether it looks like this or like this. That's not my desk. But so, laptop, anywhere you are, because it's an internet-based system, you can access the system. So the how, there's the internet. Here's all of our external users logging into the internet. There is a firewall to our server. There's an OPTIS database. When we want to make a change in the system, we have to go through the software developer because they designed the system for us. They have access to the database. You'll notice when you're in the system, every once in a while, if we haven't cleaned it up yet, there'll be a word that's spelled the way they do in Canada. Catalog with a U or something. And they have territories, I think, in there. So anyway, so that's just the basic of how OPTIS works. And up here is the URL that we're going to be using. The when is Thursday. So as soon as we're done with the training, tomorrow afternoon I'll give you your production login information, and you'll be able to, in fact, probably before you leave the room, we'll have you log into production to make sure it's working and you can get in before you leave. And then you can immediately start using it. So. Any questions so far? Okay. The Beatles has absolutely nothing to do with OPTIS. I just put it there. I thought it was funny how their hairstyles have changed over the years. And OPTIS has kind of morphed, gotten a lot better. We had a pilot, the distant past, I guess, we realized we had a problem and we needed a system. And ORPN, which is the Oregon procurement system, was created by the same software developer that I was just talking about. And we contracted with them, and the company is OGMA, to, based on ORPN, create OPTIS for us. So they took this procurement system, and then we told them, okay, we're doing grant agreements and payments, and so they took ORPN and kind of morphed it. It took a long time to lose a lot of the references to bidding, and they even had a subscription. I think there's still a subscription phrase in here where to be in ORPN you had to pay a certain amount every month. Well, you don't have to. With OPTIS, OPTIS is free. Anyway, so we went back and forth. Probably about 5 years was spent from the time we got this idea to have this system to when it was actually up in production and we could start using it. And then in your binder in section 1, there's a little bit about OGMA if you're interested. OGMA is not an acronym, believe it or not. It's the Norse God of Learning or something like that, the company that did this. Anyway, so then we had an internal implementation where we started using it for about 1.5 years. It took a lot of data entry where we had to physically enter everybody's name and the agencies and what county they were in. And when you get in the system, if you notice any of that is wrong, feel free to change it because we had to make some decisions at the time that maybe were guesses. So we used it for about 1.5 years, improved it quite a bit. Then we had a pilot group which was Basin Transit, Benton County, City of Albany, City of Corvallis, Community Connection, Douglas County, Hood River, Lane Transit, RBTD, and Yamhill. all sent representatives, and we had about a 3-month pilot thing where they'd come once in a while and have a training. And I still have it, I took copious notes because they would give me lots of feedback about what's not working and why does it work this way. And I took those back, and then we would write up another work order for the software developer, and they'd say, okay, we can do this, this, and this. Most of the kinks and bugs have been worked out, but while you're in the system today, I keep this because I still get people with suggestions. It would be a lot easier if this field was over here, or can we add this? We have an internal log that we track any suggestions or ideas that we want so that we don't lose them. And then periodically Robin and Ivan look at that log and kind of prioritize and write up a work order and make improvements. So, and we're going to try to use our website to let you know when something new happens in the system, if it's significant. So anyway, the pilot group really helped us work out a lot of the kinks, and then we had the statewide rollout about a year and a couple months ago. And you are the very last group of that. We decided to have this last one just because we had some, quite a few new people, and this is easier than trying to work on the phone or whatever. Although we are recording it, so now you can replay this if you want to, or people who need training and can't make it here, don't want to drive all the way from wherever, can view it that way. As far as system requirements, it's best if you have Microsoft Internet Explorer or Firefox. Apparently Netscape doesn't work real great with OPTIS. There's also been a few glitches with Firefox, just minor, and they only happen once in a while, so we can't really figure out why, but do most of you have Internet Explorer? It seems to work the best with that. What OPTIS does and doesn't do, really the only thing it doesn't do is word processing. We do manage our grant agreements in there, and there's a clause library where we pull all the clauses into the grant agreements. But it's even the simplest HTML formatting, it's really tricky and it doesn't like it too much. But you won't be doing it, you won't use it for word processing anywhere. Some of the steps are a little cumbersome or click intensive, I'd say, where you have to keep clicking through it to get through a wizard or whatever. That's been minimized, but it's still a little clunky. The other doesn't do is reports. We have reports that we can run as internal users, but we haven't rolled that out to you yet, and that's my biggest, whenever we have these discussions about priorities, that's the one I always say, we need to get reports for external users so that you can run a report yourself on your assets or whatever. It's not quite there yet, but it does do a lot of things really well. So it, like I was saying, there's a lot of fail-safes for the financial end of it. It manages our clause library and agreements. You can go in and look at your agreements. And the payment processing is great because it's just all over. And it does a lot of math for you, which is good. And I just have this here because a lot of times, like I was saying, you're clicking through and you think, what is going on here? Why does this screen say, the number has been assigned to the document, but you don't have to do anything. Why is it telling you that? Just remember, there's always things happening behind the scenes. It's building a document for you, even though you might not be seeing what's happening. And then I'll talk about this quite a bit. There's a lot of safety protocols that are built into the system. You have to have a username and a password to get in. If you are the signature authority for your agency, the person who in the past has actually signed a reimbursement request or a quarterly report, we will give you an e-response keyword, which is like an electronic signature code word that when you go to submit the document, you have to key that in. It's separate from your login password. And that way we know that only the authorized person is submitting a document from within the system. It doesn't actually print out your signature on it or anything, but in the system it keeps track of who from your agency submitted that document. And that stays with the document forever. You can always go into the history of the document and see who prepared it and who actually submitted it. So it's secure in that way. Okay, any questions about just kind of the basics? Okay. Okay, let's see what my next slide is here. Oh. oh, there's a hierarchy, I forgot about that. I'll pass this out. Both documents and agencies and people are set up in a hierarchy. So I'm going to pass these down there.
Sure.
So OPTIS is at the top of the hierarchy. And then all external agencies are the next thing in the hierarchy. And then this would be, say, your agency here. And then you have users under that. You could have sub-agencies under the main agency. So like TriMet has Ride Connection and other ones that would be sub-agencies, for lack of a better word. If you are a user for the top agency and you're the primary user, which is this little asterisk, I'll talk about that in a second. When you log in, you can see all the information for all of these agencies. But if you logged into this agency as Laura Baggins, you would not be able to look up the hierarchy and see everything except for the upper agency. So we again had to make some decisions when we set your agencies up as to the associations with other agencies. And I know that COOS and CCAT may not be set up there. Is anybody here from Coos County? Oh, she didn't come. Okay. So anyway, when you get in there, if it doesn't look right, let us know, because it's hard to know sometimes who to put at the very top of the hierarchy. And then there's also documents, a document hierarchy. So certain things have to exist in OPTIS before the next thing can exist. So an application notice, which is just basically us telling you the 5311 formula funding is now, well, you don't apply for formula funding. The discretionary grant funding is open for, you to apply for. And we establish that in the system, and then we get a bunch of projects, and then we fund those projects, and then we can start writing sub-grant agreements. There has to be a sub-grant agreement in the system before you can request reimbursement, and there has to be a reimbursement request before you can have a payment request. And so, like I said before, there's one primary user for every agency, and in the system it will be marked, the person's name will have a little asterisk by it. Primary contact, who can maintain both agency information, people, and also create documents. So if Frodo logged in, he'd be able to delete Sam or add a new user, that type of thing. This person has the highest level of privilege. And that's something else that you'll have to check and see if that's set up the way it should be in the system. There can only be one primary user. And then these little buildings, it just means if you log into UMBAR, it means there's an association with somebody above you. Doesn't really mean a whole lot. And then the little key, it just says you have basic privileges. So you're not the primary user. And you'll see this when we get in there. Yes?
It says with those designated with a key that you can view all. And I thought you said that if they're below and they don't have,
Are you talking about this right here? They can view all documents for their agency.
For their agency, okay.
Yeah. And anybody below them, but nobody above them. And in this case, there's no one beneath them in the hierarchy.
So Gandalf the Grey, for example, would be able to view all the documents at his level and above, but not below?
No, the other way around.
Other way around. Mm-hmm. Oh, you can see everything below it.
Right. Right. And some of you this is kind of a complicated hierarchy. Some of you just have your agency and the people that work there, and that's it. Just depends. There's all levels of simplicity or complexity. Okay. So we're going to log in just a second. Before we do that, if you would turn in your binder to section 3 at the top of the page, we'll talk a little bit about usernames and passwords. Your username, the convention that we use for it, is the first letter of your first name and your last name. So that's my username. So if you set somebody new up, try to use this convention. There have been times where we've had to set up one person with 3 different agencies who were not in the same hierarchy. They just happened to work for 3, like Dan Schwann's worked for 3 different agencies. We, maybe started with that, and then we had to go to Dan or some other combination. But there has to be at least 6 letters in your username. So there's a gentleman whose name is Drew Orr. So you take the first 3 letters or however many letters you need of the first name to add to the last name for the username. Again, these are just conventions. OPTIS will take anything really, as long as it has 6 characters. But if you could use the conventions, it just makes it easier for everybody. And then passwords, this is on the bottom of page 26. And I've already set you guys all up in training, so you're not going to need to know this right now. But passwords have to be 7 characters, and they have to have at least 2 different types of characters, so upper and lower case. Or you could use numbers, so you could have, or something like that. Obviously, you need to make it super, super complicated to make it safe, although I never do. I always use my dog's name. But, and you can even use symbols, so you could say Miley and then put some $ signs or something. Just has to have 7 characters and at least 2 different ones. Pretty basic.